All right, everybody, welcome back to Dad Talk Today. This is a little bit of a celebration episode. I don't even know how to start it, man. I'm just going to tell you. It's been a lot of smiles today, sighs of relief. And one of the men that I could not wait to talk to yesterday was the man I got on the screen with me, Mr. Jeff Younger. So, Jeff, you had no knowledge of this order until I had texted you?
That's right. You saw
Wow.
it,
Dude.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas early.
Yeah, that's right.
I was in the line, just for transparency, I was in the line at Little Caesars. Yeah, his email, and I looked down and he's like, ending child gender mutilation, and I was like, "Is this it?"
Pizza.
Yeah. Oh man, I left the pizza place. I was like, I gotta text Jeff.
Wow.
Like,
Eric's leaving pizza.
And the more I read on it, I was like, here's the thing, man. He said this is what he was going to do. So I don't give a crap what anybody thinks about Donald Trump right now. To me, he became one of the best presidents ever yesterday.
Yeah.
He kept his promise. And this was one of the things at the forefront that we were wanting to happen. And it looks like it's happened.
Yeah.
We're going to
promises made, promises kept.
Jeff, from your knowledge, man, like explain exactly how that order was put out.
So the idea of the executive order, and I kind of knew their thinking before they wrote this thing, and they engaged some top lawyers, one of them from Texas, and their idea was to try to create a situation where there would be so many federal roadblocks that it would be difficult for hospitals to do this stuff because you need a clinic to do this stuff.
Yeah.
It basically goes even further than what Trump promised, the executive order. Yeah. And so let me just go through some of the things that it does. First of all, it lays out a groundwork that there's just two sexes. So he starts off with that order and he put that one out initially. And let me tell you, when I was in court in California, this was a big source of argument, actually. Yeah. These fools are saying that there's a bimodal distribution of sexes. And this, when they say bimodal distribution, they're assuming continuity here. So they're saying there's a spectrum of sexes that's bimodal, and it's completely false. Biologically, sex is determined by gamete production, and when you produce male gametes, which is sperm, you cannot produce eggs. The hormonal environment to produce sperm does not let you produce eggs. The hormonal environment to produce eggs does not let you produce sperm. Sex is completely binary. It is not a bimodal distribution. So we went through this. That's actually a huge deal, and I can see why they came out with that executive order first.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Strategy.
Right.
Biology. Yeah.
So taking that executive order that the federal agencies have to consider sex binary rather than bimodal, we get to this executive order. And the first thing is, and I think this is the most important part of the order, it's under Section 3, and everyone should read it. It's called Ending Reliance on Junk Science. I actually predict they'll do something with climate change similar to this. The basic issue here is that the WPATH standards, which is the World Association for Transgender Health, they're a political organization. Their board does not consist of scientists, but transgender activists. The CAS review, which is the largest systematic review in the history of psychology, the largest in the history of psychology, found that the WPATH standards were based on poor evidence at best, and in most cases, no evidence. So this has been the basis for all of American healthcare of these so-called transgender kids. So the first thing he does is he says no federal agency can use the WPATH standards. And without the WPATH standards, there's zero scientific evidence for these procedures. So that's going to hamstring the FDA, first of all. I actually don't see how the FDA has currently issued a letter which allows off-label use of these puberty blockers to treat gender dysphoria. I don't actually see how that stands. What's going to happen is doctors probably are still going to prescribe it off-label, but it's going to subject them to liability, which they wouldn't normally have. The FDA letter gave them cover. So this takes all that away. Then it defunds chemical and surgical mutilation. It does this in a couple of different ways. It goes into a lot of detail, the insurance companies later in the order, but here's the high level of this. And I've had liberals call me and say, Jeff, this is not going to help your son because it only applies to Medicare and TRICARE and Medicaid. That's not true. A lot of people don't know that the Affordable Care Act that Obama pushed through included transgender care reimbursements to private insurance companies. And the reason for that is very simple. Puberty blockers are the most expensive drugs sold in the world. They're the most expensive drug in the world. And not only that, but the ongoing care after the surgeries is very expensive and it's lifelong. So it's long-term care that's very expensive, and insurance companies can't cover this without federal subsidies. So this will end subsidies to Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, which is the military insurance, but also it ends the Obama subsidies to private insurance. And that will have an effect on whether insurance companies choose to continue to cover these things and whether hospitals want to deal with it, because hospitals are going to be reimbursed a lot less. Then
let me ask you, interrupt you for a second, because that was one of my concerns when I was hearing about this for the kids that have already been through this surgery. What does that do for like ongoing care? Does this get rid of that? I was curious on how that is going to be affected.
It's pretty much taking the stand that what are called pre-existing conditions are going to still be covered, but without federal subsidy.
Okay.
So that's how it will work. And the big issue, for these people who've been harmed by these surgeries, is honestly the hospitals need to be sued, and they need to get they need $10 million so they can live a normal life, because they've been maimed and they've basically been disabled. Certainly they've been sexually disabled. But the mental effects of being sexually mutilated are intense, man. So when we get to the part about creating a federal cause of action, I think that's where that comes into play. And essentially they're planning, it's pretty clear, they're planning to just sue these places out of existence. So the directives that have been given to the Secretary of HHS are interesting because, one, they have to do an initial audit of all this stuff to make sure that all the quality and oversight are there for the program to stop this funding. But it also demands 90-day reports. And that's very unusual in these executive orders. They usually don't impose things like that. So they're going to have to report every 90 days what their progress is and how they're preventing these procedures from going forward. They also talk about directives to the Department of Justice, which I thought were significant. Most people who've looked at this haven't talked about this, but it's directing the Department of Justice to help craft a law to create a private right of action. Now, such a law has already been proposed by Josh Hawley, and he reintroduced it today, and I think it was in conjunction with this executive order. So the DOJ is ordered to cooperate with Congress, Josh Hawley in this particular case, to create this private right of action. And there's one interesting distinction here. Hawley's bill only allows the party who received the treatment as a child to sue as an adult.
Oh.
Read the executive order. It says that it wants to enact a private right of action for children and the parents of the children. So even if the child becomes an adult, and even if the child decides not to sue, the parent can still decide to sue. So the DOJ is probably going to get involved with Hawley and probably modify that bill. So that's another important aspect that Trump brings to the table here. He's not letting these legislators off the hook.
Awesome.
So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Question I got with RFK getting pulled in, I don't want to detract too much, but I think it's going to come back around. But with RFK coming in, what do you think is going to happen when he gets that spot?
He's one of these guys. If you listen to him today, I mean, you couldn't be more reasonable than this guy, right? I mean,
No.
if you ever thought that there wasn't a reasonable liberal, there's one right there. I had a math advisor, and I was like, "You were the first reasonable liberal I've ever met." I actually believe they exist now.
Yeah.
RFK is like one of those guys, and he basically said he wants the health services in the United States to operate on good scientific evidence. That's all he wants.
Yeah.
Nothing more or less than that. So if you think about the scientific evidence, we've had now 3 systematic reviews, and systematic reviews are the gold standard in medical science. They're the gold standard in psychology and psychiatry for determining the strength of the scientific studies in a particular area. Okay. They have a very specific way they're conducted. So we have 3 now. We have one from Norway, one from the UK, and that's the CAST report, and it's the largest one that's ever been done in the history of psychology or medicine. And then we have now one from Canada, and they've all come to the same conclusion that the scientific basis for these transgender treatments on kids and adults actually are extremely weak. And the evidence for children is almost non-existent. There's no long-term studies at all. It's almost completely non-existent. So if you think about that, and you think about the goal that he talked about today in the hearing, he just wants evidence-based medicine. There's no way you could possibly allow these procedures. There's no way it could happen. And I think he'll be pressuring the FDA to take a second look at whether you can give Lupron to children. Why would you give look, it's fine for precocious puberty to delay puberty for 3 months or something. It's fine for that. But long-term use to prevent you ever from going through puberty, there's no studies on this at all. And so I think doctors that do this are going to face intense scrutiny and could lose their licenses ultimately for doing this.
And we've had suppression on the research that's been done on this anyway. I know we talked about this last time you was on, Jeff. You probably know it right off the tip of your tongue. There was some research that was done by the Obama team years ago that they showed the negative consequences for doing these surgeries, and they never published it because it didn't show what they wanted it to show. Right. And we just found out about that here recently.
That's correct. It's also happening right now with Johanna Olsen Kennedy. Johanna Olsen Kennedy used to run the largest gender clinic in the United States in Los Angeles, and it's the gender clinic my son's in. And Johanna Olsen Kennedy was the expert witness when you were at that trial, Eric, in 2019. It was Johanna Olsen Kennedy was the California lady in the court that was sitting up there. They didn't put her on the stand because I destroyed her in her deposition. They were terrified to put her on the stand after that deposition. They wouldn't put her in front of a jury, at least. And so she used to run the clinic where my son's at right now. And she has run a long-term study of her own patients and has been refusing to release the results, even though it was funded by taxpayer money and she's required to release them. She will not release them. And she was quoted in the New York Times as saying that the reason she's not releasing them is that her results are showing that there's no effect from the treatments on the children. There's no effect on them. And she's afraid. She literally said this, quoted in the New York Times. She said, "I'm afraid it will be used by the enemies of transgender people, so I'm not going to publish these results."
Yep.
So I think you can expect some litigation around that because she's violating the law right there. Right. So that's 2 instances. Here's another thing that I don't think people talk about. The expert witness I brought to the table in 2019 was a guy named Mark Levine, not the Mark Levine who's the conservative commentator. This guy's actually a liberal. He's actually, I would classify him as a leftist. He started the first gender clinic in the United States in 1973. And they did these procedures on adults in 1973. And by 1976, they shut it down. They shut the clinic down because all their data showed that they were harming patients, not helping them. So they, in good faith and good scientific practices, they shut the clinic down. So they've known since the 1970s conclusively that these procedures don't work at our patients. So it's a purely ideologically driven movement, and it shows you the power of our opponents, both of our opponents in family court, our opponents who oppose strong and traditional families. It shows you their power to manufacture fake scientific facts. And it's a scary power that they wield, and they've been very successful.
Well, speaking of that power, I mean, we got to see it on the big screen not long ago. Bring up that picture.
Oh,
You get to witness this presentation by this woman right here, Jeff.
Yes, I remember this very I don't know. I mean, what is she, a priestess of the island of Lesbos? I'm like, you can't imagine a worse situation than have to sit in a pew in a church and have some angry lesbian lecture you about social policy. I mean, nothing could be absolutely worse than that.
And they could say what they want to. A Trump, Vance, they all sat there, listen. I know they had to be absolutely disgusted. Who in the world allowed that to happen in the first place?
Well, I've often questioned this whole concept of the National Cathedral. I mean, we don't have an establishment of religion in the United States, and so you're going to an Episcopal church. I mean, come on, what do you expect? Give me a break. Like, this is a church that essentially abandoned all traditional Christian practices, in the 1960s. So why are we still having presidents go to this place? And I have a feeling Trump won't ever do it again, and I don't think a Republican will do it again.
You can't blame him.
No, you can't blame him.
Somebody should have put their foot down and said, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah,
but
clown show's over.
They allowed it to happen. It's one thing that is satisfying is it seems like America's fed up with it, dude. They don't want that anymore.
No,
nobody wants this crap anymore. They're done with it.
Yeah, I mean, they're done with it because look, Americans are not. People think Americans are ideological. It's one of the things that mystifies Europeans. Asians actually get this about Americans. When I lived in Hong Kong, they get this. So they actually admire it in Americans. They think of us as ingenious children in Asia. Naive and young culture that's feeling its way in the world, but energetic in the way that a teenager is. But also apt to get into the kind of trouble that a teenager gets into. In Europe, they don't get it, but Americans are fundamentally pragmatists, meaning they basically ask this question: does it work? Does it work?
Yeah.
And if you look at the consequences of leftist woke ideology, it doesn't work.
The last 4 years was very telling.
Yeah, it doesn't work to stop wildfires. It doesn't work to stop crime. Hey, let's replace all the police with psychologists, right? Let's get social workers out there. Let's get fat women social workers out there to talk to these violent criminals and help them stop being violent. This stuff, people just look at it, but it's a testimony to the power of the propaganda, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That until a leftist has his own ass kicked, he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He won't get it. Until his own house burns down, he's not going to get it. But when you take a jackboot and you step on his shins and break his leg, he does actually get it, right? And the one thing that, because the leftist approach doesn't work, you can guarantee is eventually all of them will be mugged by reality. And they'll all shift to the right because fundamentally their approach does not work. And Americans are pragmatic like that. And Europeans are not. Germany will just completely get rid of all of its nuclear power plants and then go, where's all the electricity? What? No, they did really no fucking way. I mean, they really do that.
I know.
Like Americans are not like that. Americans are like, hey, my neighborhood burned down. That's it. I'm done. We're gonna have water here. We're done with this stuff. Like You know, I don't want any diversity crap. Whoever can put out the fire, that's who I want. You know, like Americans ultimately are practical.
Yeah, I think we're getting fed up with. I mean, we've gotten fed up with all the nonsense, especially over the last 4 years. And now you got Trump in. He's delivering on the promises that he's made, and you're seeing it now. Of course, the left is coming out and doing their nonsense, their feelings, and all that garbage. But he's delivering on his promises, and I think America is like, yeah, finally.
Well, when was the last time you saw that in your lifetime?
I know, man. It was something I was thinking about the other day. I keep seeing these executive orders.
I've never seen it, and I work for Reagan. You know, I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I mean that one yesterday in particular.
Yeah,
different.
And it's very clear that he has spent the last 4 years with some of the top political strategists, the top lawyers, the people that are interested in structurally reforming the government, not policy, but structurally reforming the government. He has spent a lot of time with these people, and they have a game plan. And I've never seen anything like this. I've been doing Republican politics since the late 1980s. I've never seen any president accomplish this much in such a short period of time.
It was refreshing because I heard him on stage talking with a bunch of different people, and they would ask some of the most obscure questions, and he was there with an answer, and and then put the Trump's the Trump the way he talks into it, and kind of got a little dig in and stuff, and then it was like next. It was so refreshing because again, the last 4 years have been duh.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean. I actually think that they intentionally elected Biden because he was mentally incompetent.
Oh, I do too. I think he was a puppet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can have him say anything you want. You can have him sign anything you want.
And he literally did. Pause.
Yeah. So
dude, we had $50 million about to go to Gaza for condoms.
Yeah, for condoms.
Why are we spending $50 million for Gazans to have condoms? What?
Man, if they have that kind of condom need, I think a lot of single men need to get some travel in here. But I mean, that's the thing is, obviously, that's money laundering for other things, right?
Yeah.
What we saw with Biden was if the CIA and the deep state and the FBI ran America, it would be like the 4 years of Biden. That because that's what happened.
Yeah.
They ran America. So now we know what it would look like. We absolutely know what it would look like. And so, Trump is going to be the exact opposite for these homeboys. I don't think did you hear about the, I believe it was the Inspector General for the FDA. She refused to leave her office because she said she didn't believe Trump had the authority to fire her. So he just had federal security.
Get out of my office.
No, they picked her up and threw her on the sidewalk.
And we need more of that.
They literally did, yeah. He's like, now I'm called the president, and I have the authority to run federal policing, and I have the authority to run the military. And if I say get out of a building, your ugly ass is getting out of my building.
Yeah.
And today he I loved what he talked like a Texan today. Actually, I kind of had a Texas accent. I think he's been talking to Governor Abbott a little bit, but he said they asked him about Colombia and kind of pushing back on taking the and Colombia backed down. And he said, well, I was very glad to hear that they backed down, but you know what's going to happen? Other people are going to give some big talk to us. Then they're going to back down. And then he goes, and they're going to like
it. I am so glad he's back. Oh God. Yeah. It's so refreshing. I was talking with Eric off camera and when it all went down, I'm just like, it is so glad to have some sanity back in the White House and a guy like Trump. His style, the way he does things. Yeah. Love his voice, the way he just
masculinity.
Do what? Say it again, Eric.
Masculinity.
Oh God,
masculinity in the White House anymore.
And like, even if you disagree with the guy, at least you know
Yeah.
he's the guy running stuff.
There
Yeah.
you go.
At least you know him.
I
Yeah.
haven't
Before
agreed
you
with him
just
on
literally did
everything.
not know, like, where did all these policies come from? You just didn't even know. Like, somebody did them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But now you know it's actually Trump running stuff, and it's him, and you know, and he had to stand an election, and you can get rid of him by an election. You know, like, but you know, and then the whole thing with the resignation emails, that is just genius. It's just absolute genius. You know, telling them, look, we're expecting 50% personnel reductions, but you can get 8 months free salary and benefits.
Yeah.
Just resign now.
But how far does it say that we had went, guys, that in 2025 we had to have an executive order go through that says there's only two genders, male and female?
I know.
Thousands of years is this, we've never seen anything like this. This transgender stuff comes out less than 10 years ago. It's all over the place. It's running rampant to the point that we have to go get, Trump to put in an order to say, this has gone too far. There's only two genders.
And we're all cheering it like it's some incredible achievement. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
but actually it is an achievement because
because of how far off the rails we had went.
Yeah.
I can't believe we got to this point. If you would have asked me back in the 80s that we'd be having this conversation today, I was listening on the way home from work, some Tone Loc, Funky Cold Medina, and the whole Serena was a man, that whole section. And I thought about, like, in the 80s, we never thought about this nonsense. And here we are, the president is talking about it's clown world.
Johnny Cash couldn't have wrote A Boy Named Sue and have the same effect.
Dude looks like a lady from Aerosmith. I mean, how far we've fallen. And, a couple of years ago, we're yelling at each other, going the wrong way down the Walmart aisle, and just the nonsense.
Some real thinking needs to be done by people on our side, and it really hasn't been done.
Yeah.
I'll do videos on this sometimes, for YouTube, and I have to like neuter them for YouTube and stuff. But, and people will talk about, it's such an amazing insight. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like obvious, right? Like our enemies are truly absolute masters of propaganda.
Oh yeah, we saw that today.
You guys saw in Texas.
RFK.
Yes,
they were very organized in that attack, man.
Oh my God, man, they're so good at it, and they've weaponized lots of conservative dispositions. Like our desire for order will bring us into compromise with people. We're like, well, if it keeps social order, let's compromise. That's no problem. But that effectively means our opponents never compromise, and so we just keep moving to the left. So they've weaponized conservative disposition. So I'm really happy to see conservatives finally saying, we can't deal with these people. There's no politics possible with these people. We simply have to defeat them and impose our will upon them. And that's what I most admire about Trump. He really, he had to go through the same family court system stuff, but in criminal court.
Mm-hmm.
He went through the
similarities.
The playbook they whipped out on Trump was made to family court, and everybody who's been in family court recognized the playbook. Like you could tell exactly what the case was going to do. If you
Kennedy today too, I'll bring that back up. They had this, coordinated attack, and it was propaganda. We've got an image that we have to portray. Conspiracy theorist, vaccine denier, this, and this, and they all repeated the same thing. False allegation, silver bullet. You saw it playing out in the screen because it's effective.
It's effective, and unfortunately it's effective on the right too. One of the basic techniques they use is called splitting. And what they'll do is they find issues that split one side. For people on the right, it's almost always moral issues. So they'll say, well, Pete Hegseth cheated on his wife, right? And that splits the Republicans between the pragmatists and realists who say, well, yeah, but Pete Hegseth will do the right thing, so who cares? And the moralists who say, "Oh no, we could never have anybody," you know.
Right.
And those are the same people that think David was the greatest figure in the Bible, by the way. But, you know, don't get me started.
I love when they cite the Bible for morals and stuff. Like, you obviously never read it. King David.
Believe me, if God can use David, God can use Trump. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. You know, I mean, David is the biggest scoundrel probably in the entire Bible, and God definitely used him. So, like, this whole split between realists and moralists is a huge issue on the right, and their propaganda works every time. Local elections, you see it all the time. That's what they did to me in my race.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well,
So
actually,
it worked.
well, Jeff, I wanted to ask you because I mean, let's look at this. You went through more than this with what you went through, and the last 4 years, a lot of Republican and conservative support went away because they saw, oh hey, I'm going to get in trouble if I support Jeff, if I stand with him and stuff. And I'm sure
they were going to lose money.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'm hoping the viewers understand what was really happening. Yeah. How did it feel when Trump got elected and you knew, or well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was that changing point for you? What was like, because I mean, you went through like hell this entire time, but those last 4 years, the systematic, your friends abandoning you and all that. How'd you feel with that? I mean, what like? Well, I don't know if you want to talk about
that. Because I'm a political realist, and I wasn't always a political realist. Because I'm a political realist, I saw, in the late 90s, what was really going on in the Republican Party.
Yep.
And I realized that, my main enemies were actually running the Republican Party.
Yep.
And then after 9/11, when we got the Patriot Act, it became very clear that it was that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party had basically made a pact with the intelligence agencies and the military-industrial complex that they would only present candidates that were acceptable to the CIA, basically.
Yep.
And, so I understood like how this game is played, and I understood who was donating to the people that were supposedly helping me.
Right.
I understood their political positions on a couple of important, let's just say, international relations issues, which also, we're on Facebook, but, which also it would impact that. And I also knew where they aligned in Texas politics. In most of the states, at this point, you have look at what's happening in Florida. You have a liberal establishment in the legislature.
Let's look at Texas. I don't want to make this all about Texas, but what's been happening here the last week or so? I mean,
exactly. And this has been nothing new to me, right? Because I saw the changeover. You did too. Mm-hmm. The changeover when we went from a Democratic state to a Republican state, and these guys just changed the letter after their name.
Yeah, cross out one name, put a new one in there. Yeah,
because that's how I still get elected. That's the way it works. Yeah. So I understood that very well. But what really surprised me was that this is an issue that actually involves the mutilation of children.
Right.
The sexual mutilation of children. And I still had a little idealism left in me that I thought, even these people who are paid off lobbyists, right, wouldn't go that far. So I had some evidence for it. For example, in Texas, we passed the female genital mutilation bill. Right.
Yep.
So female genital mutilation is outlawed in all 50 states. Right. Wouldn't that mean that transgender surgeries on these girls is illegal? Prima facie?
You think. Right.
So, I thought, well, I've got all this on my side, but that's what really surprised me is that they were willing to set aside the interests of children and literally allow children to be castrated. They were actually willing to do that for money.
Yeah, how'd you feel though when you found out there was no Santa Claus? I mean, when it took a lot out of me because I felt there were morals. The issue was important to me, obviously not as important to me as it was to you with what you were going through personally. But when I dug in, found the money, these Republican people getting paid millions of dollars to do, all the little different things here. And I saw it for what it was. I mean, it was a Matrix moment for me. I finally saw the world for what it is, but it really hurt. I still haven't got over, because I still talk to these people, and I'm like, you no good. You would sell out children for money.
Yeah,
30
and they
pieces
know
of
that.
silver.
Well, the light bulb came on for me. I was sitting in a Republican representative's office, and I realized that I was literally trying to convince this man that you shouldn't remove the testicles from 13-year-old men.
And you're going, this is insane that I'm having this conversation.
And I just said, I'm not doing that ever again. I'm just not doing that ever again. Like, people that think that you can remove the testicles from 13-year-old boys or remove the breasts from 13-year-old girls, we just have to force you to do our will. Like, we either have to put you down like a dog, or we got to force you to do our will. That's all we can do. Like, there's no reasoning with people like that. So what I gave up was the idea that a lot of conservatives have, that politics is a debate.
Yep.
It's a policy debate. And I just gave that up. I was realized this is an exercise in pure power. And so I started looking around for the means of power. So for me, instead of getting down about it, I guess I had a pretty dismal view of human nature anyway.
Yeah. Wonder why.
Yeah. I instead said, well, how do I use the system as it actually works to exert power? And focused on that. One of the mechanisms I found was go into counties where there's only 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Because if I can get 200 people to vote with me, I can actually take a representative completely out of office for 200 votes.
Less corruption and opposition
And
to go through as
nobody
well.
ever goes to those counties. And oh, by the way, I can hire people and hit every door in that county, all of them, over and over again. I can talk to every single person in that county, and I can make things happen cheaply within my means. Right. They're putting all their money into the populous counties and the cities with lots of population. So I just looked around for ways I could exert power. It opened my eyes, but what I found frustrating, how do I put this nicely?
Supposedly, we don't have to worry about the censorship on Facebook anymore.
Mark is,
Okay.
He's
well,
this
is more for our normie conservative brethren.
I got you.
Let's just say this. I've had a lot of people, after I've done speeches, will come up to me and say, well, they can't do this to you. This is against the Constitution. And I always go, yeah, well, it is against the Constitution. You're right about that, but so what? Like, the Constitution hasn't constrained the federal government for at least 150 years.
Right.
And I don't think the state constitution has constrained any entity in Texas since we became a country.
Right.
Right. So I said, so what? So it's against. There's some paper that says they can't do this to me. So what? And it just freaks them out. Like, there's an almost religious attachment to this idea that the government works the way it says in the Constitution, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, they take their civics class in high school and assume that's the way it's supposed to work. It's like, oh no.
Yeah. It doesn't work that way at all. And I always feel terrible because, it's kind of like telling a kid there's no Santa Claus and no Easter Bunny.
Right.
And I find a lot of normie conservatives simply can't accept it. And so they continue to engage in politics as though the system is constitutional, and then they'll never be able to exert power.
Well, it forces that person that thinks they have the knowledge and the grasp on everything that's going on to realize, I don't know anything.
Exactly.
I get in here and dig a little bit more. And that's an uncomfortable feeling, because we know once you start going down the rabbit hole, it goes deep.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that's right. And we've all, Sophie, 2015, 2015. I was parsing that as 2015. She makes a good point, right? Like, we experienced the same thing when we explained family court corruption to people. What do they say?
No.
Well, something
just go to court.
Those darn judges wouldn't have done that if there wasn't good gosh darn reason for it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, they do capricious things all the time. They do corrupt things all the time. And they often do things just because they don't like the cut of your jib when you walk in. Oh, he
Yeah.
looks like an athletic, manly man, and I'm a little faggot that sits on the bench. Let's test that theory about meta.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Going nuclear.
You know, I don't like men like him, so he can't see his kids because
Right.
he's not effeminate like I am, you know, or he's in a job. He's a car mechanic, and car mechanics are untrustworthy around children. You know, you got to be a white collar worker, with a pocket protector before you can be trusted around. This kind of weird stuff that judges bring to the table, they do that stuff all the time.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? There's a guy up here in Denton I talked to, and he was simply asking questions about the property division, and the judge felt he was being challenged and just put the guy in jail. 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So just like, it's just unbelievable the stuff that goes on. But you tell normie conservatives, like I actually had a woman just recently here in Flower Mound, Texas. I recently had a woman who's very prominent in the Republican Party in Denton County say, well, I don't know, Jeff. I don't think you can lie in Texas courts. I don't think you can lie in those courts. I mean, I don't even know, what do you do with somebody like that? You just go, well, let's start with the basics. Do you see the sky is blue, darling? Do you see the ball drops down? See that? I'm dropping the ball, it drops down. Like, that's literally the level you're at, unfortunately, with a lot of normie conservatives.
Yeah.
I'm with you, man. Jeff, I'm just curious, man, when that came through yesterday and you got to read it for the first time for yourself, what was that feeling like? After all this time you've been fighting to see something like that happen. I know there's got to be mixed emotions, and we'll get into your personal case here in a minute.
Yeah, it relates to the previous question. Like, finally, somebody in power didn't stab me in the back and actually did what they said they would do. And they not only did what they straight up told me, that their senior staff straight up told me they were going to do. They not only did that, they did more.
Yeah.
They went beyond that.
Did it feel like you were like, finally, this nightmare's going to come to an end, or there's going to be some positive closure? Because it was pretty dark. It was pretty dark. I mean,
yeah. I mean, let me tell you, man. I was talking to my girl about this stuff, and she's like, Jeff, we're just going to have to accept it, and you're going to deal with James when he's an adult. And I said, look. I get that you're a woman and you need to have a dark night of the soul, whatever. And I'll sit here and bring you champagne or whatever. We can watch.
Love.
We can watch Love Actually for three times in a row, whatever you need, honey. It's fine with me. But that's just not how men are. I said, I don't care if I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm going to go down swinging, and trust me, I'm going to hurt people as I go down. Like, I remember before I filled out in high school, I used to get beat up all the time. I was a super fast runner, but I was a lightweight, so I always tried for the football team. I just wasn't heavy enough for it to really be good at it. But I was a good receiver. So people would beat the crap out of me all the time because, I was a wiseacre, and you know how that is. And so after a while, I realized I don't actually have to win these fights.
Right.
Like, I need to hurt these sons of bitches bad enough that they don't come back for a second.
Exactly.
And that's the way I feel about it. I don't care if I lose. They're eventually going to have to win. And what's also perplexing to me, and you guys feel this way about your cases too. Like, I'm like, so look at all the problems I caused for the governor. Look at all the problems I caused for the speaker. I mean, I think I can honestly say that I was maybe 10% of the reason that Dave Phelan's not speaker anymore.
I could say, yeah. I mean, there's big consequences for those involved in your
case. Not the majority part of it, but I'm some part of that.
Yeah.
I was a part of it. I exposed that calendar committee, and that hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
So like, there's a lot of people that I put the wampum on, right? And so you go through that and you go, did it ever occur to them that they could just give me 50-50 custody with my kid and I would just go away? Like, I believe that I've participated in destroying entire careers in the House of Representatives. I destroyed the whole transgender program at Health and Human Services here in Texas, right? I'm about to remove a judge in California, and I guarantee you I will have this practice completely outlawed in California in 3 years, okay? And they could have just said, hey, Jeff, you can just see your kid 45% of the time. You can keep paying your $32,000 a year in child support. I'm not going to raise it on you. I'm not going to give you any attorney's fees. And we'll just hold off and see what James wants when he's an adult.
Yeah.
And all of this would have gone away. I would have just gone and raise my kids, go back to running my business, you know. But now they just keep doubling down. And I'm like, do you know how many more people's careers I'm going to destroy? Do you have any idea how I'm going to walk through the institutions of Texas and California and now South Carolina and going up to North Dakota? I'm about to go to Delaware. I mean, I'm going to just burn these institutions to the ground. I mean, and it's all because they're too proud to just say, hey, Jeff, you get to see your kids 45% of the time, man. Chill out.
Yeah, if they would have gave you expanded basic, you would have walked away. Yeah, you would have been like every other dad in Texas, the United States.
I say it all the time, and I mean it.
Yeah.
Because I know these gentlemen agree with me. There's nobody on this screen right now that wants to be doing what we're doing.
No.
This is not something we set out to do.
No.
Yeah.
Look, no offense, but I don't even look, guys. I'm an INTP. I'm a mathematician. Like, you know, I'd rather be in a closet doing some mathematics. Like, even I had to learn how to do public speaking. Like, I had to learn all this stuff. I mean, doing interviews, this is not my thing, bro. You know, so
wait.
But, okay, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to put the hurt on these people, and I'm going to continue to put the hurt on them. Like, it's going to get worse.
Yeah,
way worse than what I did before, because at this point I have very little to lose. You know, like this is one thing I think the California judge is kind of starting to realize.
Yeah. So wait, you didn't want to go to Denton to speak to all the trans activists, get into fights, have your ribs broken, and all that stuff. You didn't want to do that. That wasn't on your calendar of events.
Believe it or not, I have no interest in doing this.
Crap. Okay. I did not know that.
I will admit that in the 80s, I lived in the UK for a while, and I did enjoy scrapping in the streets with Antifa when I was young. But that was my youth. I have matured. But like literally, man, I think what we all have in common is that we like a good scrap, all three of us.
Yep.
We like a good scrap. And at some level, you just take joy. Like, okay, yeah, I can't stop you from taking my kids, but I can fuck up your political career.
Oh, yeah.
Let's scrap, bitch. Let's go.
That's been my motto. I know I might not get no overnight solutions right now, but I'm going to be a nightmare for you.
100%.
You're going to know my name, and you're going to know why I'm fighting.
Well, I think it's part of our makeup, though. I mean, we all got gray hair. We all had our dads in our lives. I mean, my dad, he told me if you get into a fight, go down swinging. Make them remember, make them think about it twice. And our generation we don't want to give up. I don't know I do know what's happened to the younger generations, but you just don't see a lot of that anymore.
No, you don't. I think it's actually what distinguishes Gen X from Gen Z, actually.
Yeah.
Is the scrappiness. I try to explain the punk rock mentality, and, I showed a friend of mine, I showed him an interview with Johnny Rotten during the, he used to, Johnny Rotten.
Oh, yeah.
So he had this hilarious, this relates to what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to tie it back.
Yeah, the BBC did this hilarious interview with him during the first Trump administration. And they thought, Johnny Rotten, he's a punk rocker, he's a communist and all this shit, and so they get him on there and they try to get him to talk some shit about Trump. And about a third into it, he stops. And this is just Johnny Rotten's way. He just stops and he goes, "You're trying to get me to trash talk Trump, aren't you?" And the interviewer goes, "Well, I'm just asking factual questions." And he goes, "No, you're trying to get me to trash talk Trump. And he said, let me tell you something, you haughty little bitch. He called him a haughty little bitch. He said, I come from a working class family in England. And Trump represents the working class people. And if you think I'm going to trash talk Trump, you got another thing coming. And then Mike Tyson did the same thing on an interview. I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
You know, they tried to get him to trash talk Trump, and Tyson said, he brought up the fact, you know, somebody asked him about Mike Tyson in a press conference, and the President Trump went off on the reporter and said, you don't know what Mike Tyson went through as a boy. If you knew what he went through as a boy, you would have compassion for him. You would not be trash talking him right now. I have nothing but respect. He's one of America's greatest athletes. He came from nothing to be one of America's greatest athletes. And so, you know, Tyson said, look, man, I respect this is your show, whatever. You can say whatever you want. But all I'm going to say is I like Trump. I voted for Trump, and I'm not going to say anything bad about Trump. You know, like there was something to that attitude both of those guys have. Like, they're not taking any shit from people anymore. You just reach a point where you're not going to do it. And the fastest way to get a man there is to take his kids.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it's crazy, man. Punk rock was always supposed to be rebellious, you know, and against the establishment. I see punk rock now and don't even I don't recognize it. Like Green Day. I mean, these guys are going by everything that the left says. I mean, Trump was the most rock and roll thing that we've had happen to politics, and Johnny Rotten himself said so.
If Green Day was a homosexual relationship, they'd be the bottom, man. I'm just telling you that.
Well, I think that might be the way it's going right now.
Yeah, they're not punk, man.
No,
Punk was. We were the first ones to realize how the boomers had sold us out.
Yeah.
So all these people on the right talk about the boomers and whatever. Yeah, that's because we figured this stuff out and taught it to you. You know, like we figured it out the hard way, and we were still living in the society that had bound us up towards this suicidal life where we were basically going to wind up completely broke without a house and everything. And we had an entire system built to push us into that, you know, we had to revolt from it.
Yeah.
Lauren has a great point. It's no longer rage against the machine. It's rage for the machine. So true. It's so true. That's Green Day. That's Green Day.
So obviously I've got a few questions in here for you, Jeff. Sophie, I didn't know what to make of this statement in the beginning, but she said, I read Jeff's son had already been put on puberty blockers. What a horrible mother. Jeff, is that the case? Or
that is the case. Yeah, he's on puberty blockers.
Oh, he is.
I don't think he's on cross-sex hormones, but he's on puberty blockers. And the thing about it is, with this Trump order, if I can shut down the hospital administering this, and don't forget, this is the most expensive drug sold in the world.
Right.
If I can get that shut down, then it'll only be in a system for about 3 months, and that won't have any permanent effect. That's my goal, actually.
Yeah.
Hey, if I get some disruptions, I've got a massive thunderstorm going on outside my house here. So.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah. Hit my town there as well. Yeah. Wow.
Now, Trump made this announcement 2-3 months ago. He put out a video saying that he was going to do what he did yesterday. He let him know ahead of time he was going to do this.
Yes,
and my biggest fear when I saw that, it was like, I know your ex sees that.
Yep.
So outside of that, with the puberty blockers, we don't know. Well,
I don't know anything. So unfortunately, and this is not even legal. It's not illegal in Texas. It's not legal in California, but she has no notification requirements for me. So I don't know anything about their education or medical or psychological. Don't know anything about it. And that's something, frankly, I think we're going to ultimately, and this is what I'm going to try to do with, you know, this idea of pushing a bill for a federal cause of action. I think it's an opportunity for us to talk about a lot of our issues in family court in the states. If we can bring a federal cause of action for this, how come we can't bring a civil rights action out of family court? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, actually. And so I think it's time to have that conversation. And I think it will it will break through the desire of people in the federal Congress to not talk about family court issues. They do not want to deal with this. It's a
All right.
loser issue for them from their point of view. But I think we can break through with this issue and expand it to other issues, and that's the counter propaganda game plan that I'm trying to run with. And I think it's something we should all think about. I'm all for like swarming tactics. That's why I don't have a foundation. I don't have anything. I don't believe we should have those. I'm all about decentralized swarming action because our enemies can't stop or predict it. So as you know, all of you out there that have groups and you're thinking about this, think about how we can tie in family court issues to this transgender issue, because frankly, all these issues are coming out of family court.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I realized years ago, man. This is the one issue that seems to get action. I mean, we see an you've been begging for something to happen in family court in a long time. Nothing's really happened. Well, this affected family court yesterday. Yeah. And this is one of those things that gets the attention.
Well, you guys were talking about this a while back.
A long time ago.
And I know, Jeff, for a fact, you laid out the plan. And I know Eric and I have talked about, like, if there's if you're dealing with family court and all that, you need to get behind Jeff and be part of that, because they're tied. If you want to get moving on your needle, you need to get behind Jeff. And
and we should all back each other, man. This is
yeah.
the thing. I'm 100% like, this is why I go onto any media that's pro family. I go on it, and I publish it, and I get big guys on X to publish it, because we have to have each other's backs. We have to swarm guys, and it will give them let them see the reality that actually, if we ever turned into a voting block,
God,
we see what the men vote.
We could be more powerful even than the female vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that
was all over the news election night. They was talking about how the male vote really swung in favor of this election. Something else we've talked about. Jeff Michael Keller just brought up, and this is a good question. He said, question to Jeff: could his ex take his son to a country that didn't ban the surgeries? Since she moved to California, I fear she'll go further. We saw what happened in Texas when that got banned, and so she went to California. This is what we talked about, like trying to look ahead of some of the things the opposition could be doing. That does sound like something that needs to be addressed.
No question about it. In fact, there's a well-known case of a woman from Ohio who couldn't get the procedure done, and it wasn't because it was illegal. It was just because the hospitals refused to do it. So she flew her son to Thailand and had his dick cut off. Okay, this is the reason why I tried to put into the bill in Texas that these procedures would be felony child sexual abuse, because in Texas that gets you life in prison, and in some cases could get you the death penalty. Right?
I think it should.
So yeah, if it involves another felony crime, you're eligible for the death penalty. So
I think it should.
Yeah. So that would stop people from leaving. You can't take your kid outside the country, abuse them, and then bring them back. In Texas, we're just going to put you in the slammer, right? So, but they took those 3 sentences out of that bill, specifically to leave the loophole to let them go to other states, but it also go to other countries, right? Which is why we definitely need federal intervention here. Like, I am definitely going to go with this new executive order. I don't think I have a significant change in circumstances on any of the payment stuff, the insurance stuff.
All right.
But I do think I have a significant change of circumstances in the fact that the WPATH standards can't be used anymore. Those were directly used in my trial and are the basis on which my ex-wife said that she is doing this to my son. So I have a significant change in circumstances here based on her testimony. So I am going to ask that the court have the passports of the children given to a third party, and that they be put into a trust, and that put special criteria for child abduction, which California has a standard set of those around delivering those passports. Robert Garza has a question. What's been the biggest challenge in advocating for legislative change regarding parental rights? Well, I think the biggest challenge that I've encountered is that legislators, unfortunately, seem to think of what happens in family court as a woman's rights issue rather than a family rights issue. So that every time you ask for fair treatment for all parties in the litigation, it's perceived as anti-woman. And I think a lot of legislators understand the female vote to be the swing votes, and they're just not willing to go there. In particular, you find women vociferously, Republican women especially, will vociferously defend the current child support system.
Oh, yeah.
And the current domestic violence system.
Wow.
So that's the biggest problem that I've had. I think Robert's actually done a good job in finding legislators who are accommodating to our message, and he presents himself very well in that he doesn't seem to be, I mean, maybe I'm too aggressive, you know what I mean? So these things you have to take into, these things are important. You know, I'm not the right person for a lot of stuff. You know, there are people better than me who are temperamentally, attitudinally, physically better for things. So there are a lot of things that we should use women for rather than men. And I don't think a lot of times we don't have honest conversations about this, because a lot of our guys want to be in the front. They want to be leading things. You know, I'm old enough to know that the last place you want to be is leading things. You know, that's not where you want to be. Even at companies, like, you don't want to be. I've been CEO of a company. You don't want to be a CEO. Yeah. Trust me on this. So you'd rather be on the board. You know,
but they don't get the attention.
Yeah, they don't get the attention.
They need the attention.
Not, yeah,
hooked on
and
attention.
So, you know, I know when I had a company in Hong Kong, and when we would hire people in Hong Kong, you say things like this: I want a Chinese, Hokkien Chinese female between these ages. Please send a picture. You know, and the reason is I know that who I'm dealing with, and if that kind of a person would deal better with my customer, then that makes sense. But we should be doing that. We should be making decisions based on who's most effective. Mm-hmm. And it's probably, you know, I hate to, you know, I don't want to be the jackass, but like, it's probably not you. Most of the time, it's not me. One of the reasons you don't see me in Austin lobbying very much is, you know, well, one, they banned me from the.
there's that, yeah.
But you know, I wouldn't be effective at this point. I've ruined too many careers there. I've hurt those guys, and I'm not going to be effective in getting them to do stuff. I'm much more effective having, you know, you guys walk in there and say, would you rather deal with me or would you rather deal with Jeff Younger? What's it going to be? You know, you always position against your extremists. You don't disavow your extremists. You position against your extremists. So people often think, well, it's a you know, you have to be the nice guy. You got to be persuasive. Or some people say you got to be, you know, aggressive and coercive. Actually, you need both. Mm-hmm. And one won't work without the other, frankly. You know, if they know that you're persuasive, but they don't have to listen to you, there's no downside, then they're just not going to do it. Right. But if you're super aggressive and coercive, then they're going to form a coalition against you. You know, so but so you need both. It's just my temperaments, you know, I'd rather kick them in the nuts when they're not looking. That's what I'd rather do. But there are smooth talking people. There are even women that I know that are extremely good at lobbying. And so I support those people. I actually call, you know, you can talk to Robert. I'll say, what should I do to support your lobbying efforts? Like, I'll change what I intend to do to support lawmaking efforts. So I mean, I don't have a problem with that. That's the humility we got to get over a lot of this stuff. Like, nobody's right for everything. And so when you're looking at something that needs to be done, probably not you. It's probably not me.
I agree with that for the most part. If it was any other thing but family law, I think there's just too much money involved.
Yeah, there's
too much money involved to get any legislative change.
Yeah,
you're going to need something like Trump to go in there and do it. This state by state stuff.
There's
too many bad actors. It's
Do you guys agree that there's no remedy in the system for the system? You generally agree with that?
Yeah, there's no.
for the
Yeah,
most part, yeah.
you're not going to change the
You know
laws
what?
within the system. No. Oh, no.
I say all together, but I'm trying to stay
You got to be
optimistic.
outside the
All together,
system. The
yeah.
whole system has to be changed somehow. And I mean, there's lots of ways to think about how you might do that. Some you'd want to talk about on Facebook, and some you wouldn't.
Right.
But all of them are fundamentally subversive of the system. And one of the things I think our guys could benefit from is thinking more about systems.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is this system? Like, where does the money go? How does it change hands? Where are the pain points where we can make, like, for example, we had a small success in Dallas County because we detected a feud between a group of judges and the prosecutor in Dallas.
Yeah.
And we got him to actually prosecute 2 judges. Okay. So, those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be opportunistic and ambush oriented and seek leverage. But ultimately, we all know if we can't bring civil rights actions into federal court with the special civil rights laws and the powers that it gives us as litigants, we're probably not going to reform anything in the states. I'm talking in South Carolina to people that, I mean, we got a husband that burned down his house with his son in it, and he got full custody of the son.
What?
I mean, like, we got crazy corruption at levels that I don't think would even be tolerated in China or Russia. This is stuff they would execute judges for in those countries. So when you've got that kind of corruption going on, like, you got to think of the system and how you can pressure it outside the system. But I still think I really admire people, and I continue, as you know, to fight within the system. I appeal, I'm doing all that stuff because I'm making a record so that eventually people will know when the system has to be reformed, that why it has to be reformed, but I'm not doing it expecting that someday a judge is going to rule for me,
Right.
Jeff, I don't know if I can say it on air. What about your child support issue?
Oh no, I've made no secret of this. I'm not going to pay child support anymore. The reason is that, when I read in the medical records, this one specific part where they asked my son, do you want to have children? And it's actually very unusual for a child my son's age to say yes to that question. Okay, it's very unusual. And the reason I know the reason he said yes. The reason he said yes is when I was legally prohibited from telling him he was a boy or a girl, I used to read from the book of Genesis all the way up to the creation of man and woman, and then how they peopled the world afterwards. And I know it comes from that. And so he said, yes, I want to have children. And then, and this is all in quotation marks, so this is not like a summary. They describe the process where they can remove his testicles, extract sperm from the testicles that they removed, and then they told him that he could have a baby as a woman later in life. And when I saw that, I said, okay, at this point, I simply cannot give money to anything that even comes close to doing this to my son.
The death penalty isn't even good enough, dude.
Yeah, I cannot support this in any way. So I've been very open about it. I'm not paying child support. I'll never pay it again. No matter what you do to me, I'm never paying it again.
I remember talking to my wife, Brandy, about, we actually had this conversation last evening, and I'm like, it is a rare day you find a guy with morals like Jeff, that, is like, he's standing up. He doesn't give a crap, what happens to him. Is wrong. He's not going to pay into a system that's going to do something that's morally reprehensible to him.
No,
and I wish there were more guys like you. I mean,
add the note. Spent close to $1.5 million fighting against this. So it's not the money.
Right.
If his son needed to be supported and it was going to be done in a way that you believed in and he was taken care of.
Right.
That's one thing. But essentially with this, he is funding the abuse of his child.
Yeah, and I'm just not doing that. You know what I mean?
Extreme abuse, the most extreme form of child abuse that we've
Yes.
ever seen, guys.
Yeah.
They want to legalize it. If they wanted to legalize sex trafficking or
Yeah.
physical violence towards a kid, absolutely no. But this gender surgery, mutilation of a child, pump them full of hormones, somehow because we've made it this social construct, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's not okay. It is the most evil
It's not
thing
okay.
I've ever heard of, man.
And I don't know why more men don't just stop paying child. You look, if you can't see your kids and you can't direct the mental, moral education of your children, I don't think you should pay child support. And just for anybody listening in Texas here, Texas law enforcement, I am suborning a crime. I am advocating for people to commit felonies right now. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I think people just need to relax. Like, going to jail is not the worst thing in the world. You know,
3 square meals, TV, all the sex that you want. Maybe not the kind that you want, but
Yeah, I mean, and living a life where you're helping to hurt your son or hurt your daughter.
Yeah.
That's not something I can live with. I just can't live with that, and I think that's actually what destroys most men, is that they are cooperating with the destruction of their own children. So I just think men should stop doing it and relax about it, I mean, and I honestly, if we could, and I don't know that we can, I think it's probably unlikely, but if we could actually do mass disobedience on this issue, they'd have to change the laws.
I think it could happen. It's having the microphone that's big enough to get everybody together to say yes, to do it, is where the issue comes off, because they've done such a good job at censoring anything to do with this message. And then again, Jeff, I mean, Dwayne, me and you talk about this all the time. Last year, we sat there, and they've got more. We just talked about this the other night, and I thought it was hopefully something that had went away, but they're wanting to do this retroactive child support, to where
again,
pay an extra 9 months. Mom doesn't have to take a paternity test if she doesn't want to. It's going to be a Title 4D, dream, and it's the Republicans that are pushing it.
Again,
but Dwayne and I sat here time and time again, Jeff, like trying to warn people, guys, this is coming. And you could literally watch the numbers. Down. It's like, I just want to talk about my story. This is what and if you get off of that, it'll just start going down, and we're like, oh my God, dude, our guys are just sitting here watching something coming at them like a freight train. And when it hits, they're going to be screaming. But because they didn't get proactive, they're going to be reactive.
Yeah.
And man, how do you get that movement to change, Jeff? And I'm not trying to put down our guys. They've been through enough. I understand that. But something's got to change.
There is something, I think it comes a lot from Protestant Christian culture. This idea of the testimony. Yeah. Sharing my testimony, and somehow that
gonna win you to Christ.
I've never thought of that, but that's good stuff, dude.
That's a mental habit that you're seeing. It's a ritual and a mental habit you're seeing occur right before you, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the mental habit of a man of action.
Yep.
It's someone who has replaced action with words and the idea of affecting other people instead of taking action. This is what you're witnessing.
Yeah, like church, go in there, and I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to be doing, give my testimony, go to the altar, get prayed for. Now I go back to my old life through the week. Next Sunday, I give my testimony and do it all over again.
Right.
Six flags over Jesus.
Six flags over Jesus.
Yeah, this is why, you know, people will say, Jeff, you know, I really admire you as a dad, or where can we go to give you money or whatever. And I'm like, you know, you're just making a virtue out of necessity here. Like, this is what I have to do because it's my son. Like, you know, it's what any dad should do. It's not, I haven't picked up the machine gun and actually become, a hero or anything yet.
Which I'm shocked about, by the way. I'm just going to throw it out there now. I'm shocked.
Yeah, well, give me
more
time.
power to you, brother. But wow, couldn't do it.
That one.
I still have hope, but you know, if they're dumb enough to take away hope, we'll talk again.
Yeah,
you come talk to me in Huntsville, and but you know, people just your story is important. People need to hear your story, but you know, it's
why you're here.
It's more important that you figure out how to change things.
Right.
It's more important that you adopt an action mindset, and it's really not. That's why I keep saying it's like if you think you're the guy, it's probably not true. You know, when you're the guy, when you think it's not you,
right?
That's actually when you're the guy.
The guy is more than likely going to be told by somebody else that he's the guy.
Yeah.
Because
somebody
the guy doesn't want to be the guy.
Right.
It's usually right now. I know I don't. And I told you when I got my nut check was when I watched you there at UNT with all those activists. It's like there's no way you'd catch me doing that. Like I couldn't do it.
Well, I mean, Eric calls me up all the time and says, Jeff, you're the right guy to do this. Why don't you go do this? I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I don't fucking want to do this. Can you get somebody else? And he'll call me 10 minutes later. Yeah, I checked. There's nobody else. Go fucking do it. You know, so it's like it's just get over your story. We've all been through it. We commiserate with you, right? But we want to be thinking men of action who are making a difference for children. We can't do that if we wallow in self-pity all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say that. It's not like I'm slicing anybody. I've heard the unbelievable, like I just told you a story about this poor mother. Her husband set fire to the house with her son in it. He managed to escape barely.
Mm.
And then she loses her kids. She can't even see her kids. And then she gets alienated from the kids that he tried to murder. Like, these are horrible stories, right? So what does she do? She starts a Substack and she just starts destroying the political career of the justice advocate in her county.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be doing. You know, what our stories are useful for is when we're talking to normie conservatives who don't know how bad it is.
All right.
You know, one thing that I do think could be effective takes money, and it's not going to be easy. But I tell you, one of the most effective things that I think personally I've done with Dad Talk was when I got to put cameras in the courtroom for the John Mass trial.
That was awesome.
Okay. You got to see what goes on behind closed doors. Yep. The judge is the one that allowed me to be in there. I love that judge. Got no problems with him. But the games that went on there, something doesn't add up. You got to see it. We was there all week. And I said, man, if I had a way where I could start putting these cameras in these courtrooms, and it's one thing when we come on here and we say, this is what we're going through. It's another thing when we can actually show you. And then let's take that 5 or 6 hour court trial, condense it down and give them the bullet points and say, watch this right here. I think it'd be a wake-up call.
Definitely a wake-up call.
It shows you how bad the judicial system is, because for those that haven't watched the John Mass trial, go to Dad Talk Today on YouTube. You can watch both the videos.
2 documentaries for free.
2 documentaries that you did. You were brought into the courtroom. You got to see all the evidence, and you couldn't walk away without giving him first-degree murder. The video, the admission, I mean, there's some, I don't want to drone on and on, but he should have been found guilty, but a jury didn't. It was ridiculous.
Because he was a dad.
Right.
And because he went through the silver bullet.
Right.
He didn't have to be guilty of the silver bullet.
Exactly.
He just had to be accused of the silver bullet. And that right there, guys, these guys that get accused of sexual molestation, I feel so sorry for these guys. Is no matter what they do, they're going to have that stain on them for the rest of their lives. I turned my back on them in the beginning, not in a mean way,
Right.
because if you've been
You don't know
accused
'em.
of that, I'm going to play it safe here. What if I get this wrong, man? I can't be around that. And
Right.
that's what makes it so deadly. How many people have turned their backs on these guys? And
Well, what would have
man,
happened? What would have
imagine.
happened though had you not got into the courtroom and showed everybody what happened? Just John Mass would have. He got off light, so he must have not done it. It must not have been as bad as what they thought, and then they would have brushed under the rug and moved on.
But now, guys, it gets worse. I just talked to a mother just like a little over a week ago. I now know of 3 murders that has happened to these dads where they know who killed them. Some of them, there's camera evidence, and the grand jury didn't indict them at all. There's not even a tap on the wrist.
Darling down here in Texas.
Tyrone's one of them.
Tyrone Darling.
Chad Reed case, and there's another case.
Darling is a classic example of that.
I can't talk about it openly yet. I
Yeah.
am talking, and I want to report on it. But this was a case where their own kid said, "I watched mom kill dad," and mom has never spent a day in jail.
Yeah.
Guys, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about right here. The Tyrone Darling, he's walking down the road, Jeff. They're in Arlington. Baby mom comes up that had a transgender girlfriend, a girl
Right.
acting like a guy, and took a gun and shot him in the head, grabbed the child.
Broad daylight.
Grand jury didn't indict. Been 2 years now.
Yeah.
How do you
This
get
is,
away with it?
This is the thing that, again, I'm a realist, right? The system, if you're a man, the system does not care about you. And you have to understand this. Like, you have to be real about this. The system absolutely does not care about you.
There's no legislation that can make them care.
No. Laws will
That
never
judge
fix
is
it.
God.
Yeah,
And,
nobody will
and,
fix it.
and another twist of words or whatever. But it doesn't matter what legislation you got in there. He's going to do what he wants to do. And right now, it's very tilted for the man.
Yeah,
Well,
and there's this weird thing where, and this, I actually don't understand it, because every man knows this is not true. Any man who's ever dealt with females and has even ever had daughters or dealt with females in any capacity knows that this is not true. They behave as though these female accusations are reliable.
Oh, yeah.
And every man knows the neuroticism of women. Every man has experienced it directly has experienced this. Every police officer, every prosecutor knows rape has the highest false reporting rate of any crime.
Yep.
And not to say something that blew my mind, I didn't know this until this year, higher than insurance fraud.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Higher false reporting rate than insurance fraud, which is just like unbelievable to me. So they know that most of these men are completely innocent.
Right.
They politically cannot be seen to be saying that the woman has made unfounded accusations. And so these dangerous women walk around, and we don't like to talk about dangerous women, but I'm sorry. I don't care how manly you are. I don't care what your bench press is or how much you deadlift. A woman with a 357 revolver will kill your ass. I don't give a shit how tough you are.
That's always the scenario put out there. Well, she's not as strong as the man. They can't do any real damage. Okay.
Yeah, well, I got a buddy of mine who got stabbed in the liver while he was asleep, and then they prosecuted him for domestic violence.
Yeah.
I've seen those.
That's why men don't call the cops. We do
handcuffed
not
him to
have
the
data.
bed. He was handcuffed to the bed because he passed out. He doesn't even remember it.
Wow.
She stabbed him. So like, you just got to understand, like, you shouldn't be in. You can't put yourself in these positions. You can't. You can't be walking down the street in broad daylight, in a predictable way. If you have a crazy ass girlfriend, if women get violent, you should run.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, one reason I wanted to bring it up though is I wanted to thank Eric for reporting on like the different things, the Tyrone Darling, the John Maslon stuff that you went out and you said let's expose this stuff, and so many people, myself included, have learned so much and made me start doing research and stuff like that. And I'm again thankful that Eric's done those things at expense to himself. I'm going to actually put a plug in here. I know he doesn't like doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. You can filter me out later. But Dad Talk Today has ways to support. If you
talk
want
about the website, Wayne, I'm giving you permission.
I'm like, I didn't want to talk about it. So Eric has built the awesomest website at dadtalktoday.com. It's been, well, yeah, it was a team effort. But go to dadtalktoday.com. It has a lot of good information out there. You can get information on Eric's book. He's an author. He knows how to write and read. Who knew? You can learn and get information on the parental alienation program that's being offered. That remember the Hope and Darkness group is doing that. Eric has been working with and got a deep discount. It's $50, I believe, for the entire 13-week course. One time, $50. 13 weeks, and it will teach you how to go in and get your kids back. I'm trying to think of all the other fun stuff on the site. But anyway, it's a great site. Highly recommend people go out there. If you can, donate to it. Support Eric's efforts because, for him to go out there, I don't know if you want to talk about numbers, but the John Mass trial, how many zeros were in that one? It was a lot. It takes a lot to get a crew out there and do that. Oh, and also for the folks out there that, hey, tell my story. I just want to be heard. I need assistance, whatever. On the dadtalktoday.com website, you can go there and actually schedule time with Eric to sit down, talk with him about, assistance or how to get your story told or whatever. Book some time with him. Sit down. If you're wanting to make some change, get some action done, go to dadtalktoday.com. There's a lot of good information there. Highly recommend people check it out. All right, that's my spiel. I'll shut up now.
Well, let me plug that John Mass documentary. If you want to understand the actual, outside risk in these family courts, that is the documentary to watch.
Oh yeah,
because at all, man.
One of the things when you're planning for things, you go, well, what's the worst case scenario? Mast is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And so if you want to know what it is, that's the documentary to watch. And I contend you're not making good decisions if you don't know the worst case scenario. So you should watch this documentary for sure.
It unfortunately, it's taken showing that worst case scenario to get people's attention. Mm-hmm. One of the things that hurts my heart so much, guys, I'm talking to the movement right now, is one of these fathers would get killed. Everybody shows up. Everybody's upset. We got to get something done now. Mm-hmm. And then the next week, they're still there. And the next week, it's like they go, and then another dad gets killed. Everybody's back. And I was like, I'm so sick of this trend, dude. These guys are dying. They're dropping like flies. And it seems like nobody's paying attention. That's why I got so tired of going around this country with the CPACs and talking to the legislators. I never want to wear a suit again. I had the same conversations with the same people over and over and over. They knew what was going on. I got tired of the lip service. They know what's going on. To sit there and the loving father that he was, and you would have to know his family to understand.
I've met them. Great people.
Man. I mean, salt of the earth, grew up Amish. Okay. One of the nicest guys. He bent over backwards. He loved his family. One of the hardest workers out there. And the system was against him every step of the way, no matter what he did.
The you are, the more the system has to turn against you.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise you get 50-50 custody.
Right. Even in his death, Jeff, the system was against him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
watch the trial.
My case never got to trial because I can never get past the retainer fees. And that made me upset. And I used to think my case was bad until I got in here and started hearing other people's. But with John, oh my God, man.
When they played that confession video, that was one of the most powerful pieces.
We were supposed to be there deciding if first degree or second degree murder. and it's first degree if it's premeditated. We have a video, which is also on Dad Talk Today YouTube. It's on the Substack too,
Right.
of him saying after this, it was premeditated. In his own words, he said it was
I know.
premeditated. I
Yeah.
thought about it, and then I went and I done it. And then he said, I shot him 2 or 3 times. He should have dropped like a bad habit. And he's over there asking the cop, is he dead? Is he dead? But in his own words, it was premeditated. And this man got off with manslaughter. And you couldn't have done any more work than what we did. To answer your question, Dwayne,
yeah,
I mean, roughly probably about $25,000 to pull that off that week. And let me tell you something, that was cutting corners everywhere you could. I had like 6 guys there, and we ended up churning out another documentary, and then 5-6 days of trial, Airbnbs. It was a lot. Airplane tickets, but
having to run to Office Depot to get a new thing. That one went bad.
You don't know until you're there, man, because
right.
you're in the middle of the journey when that's going on, and they got like this 100-year-old courthouse. I thought it was us. We had to keep going and getting different microphones and equipment because the sound was horrible. Until I found out from the news stations, it was like it's not just you, it's all of us, and so we're gonna do with what we've got. But I go back to these guys and think about those emotions that are attached and how they're, told you got to stay calm. You got to stay calm. When they was reading that verdict for John Mast, I was about to go nuts, man. I sat down in the back and I was just telling myself, stay calm. I had never been through anything like that. And that rush of emotion, betrayal, hurt, anger.
Right.
As soon as it was over, I said, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I got back to the Airbnb and I screamed to the top of my lungs, man. I had to let it out. I don't know how these guys do it. Jeff, I don't know how you've done it. I know there's probably times you don't know how you've done it either. You had to do it.
I have to. I mean, it's just, I do what I have to do. I do what I have to do.
But if we can get everybody involved to where we've got access, and yes, man, forget the people who need to be a spotlight. We're all a spotlight. Your kids are the spotlights, guys. Your grandkids are the spotlight. That's who we're doing it for. And let's end this.
Yeah,
I want to talk about something else.
Look, I'm all for the reform efforts. I'm 100% for it.
Yeah.
Nobody, I have bona fides here on this, right? Like I put my money where my mouth is, and I've taken the hits. I've done it. But I also think we have to be looking at young men, and we shouldn't act like the boomers did to us. Okay. A lot of us are in this position because we listen to the boomers at some level. We listen to them. And I think we have a duty to tell young men not to get married.
And we've become like them in many ways. As we get older, we start acting more like our parents.
I sound like my dad.
Well, this is interesting that you brought that up, Jeff, because I couldn't agree more. Just when Dwayne came to my house, him and Jimmy Smith came and stayed for the weekend. We went deer hunting, and he brought his sons. And they're teenagers, So we're over here talking about like this and this. And it was Dwayne's son that really kind of woke me up to it. And he was like, you guys keep talking about this, this, and this. And he said, but you don't understand. That was a different generation. That's not happening like this anymore. You didn't have the cell phones. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have social media. And the kid put it in better words than I will ever be able to. And I learned something that day. And we got to start reaching the youth, man. That really is, if I would have started talking to somebody that was 16, when I very first started this podcast, he'd be 21 right now. He's the one going through it. And if we could have changed that mindset back then, and
let me tell you, if you want to exert power against the system, you tell young men not to marry and not to have children, and you have ended it. You've ended. They will have to bend the D and do what you need them to do because they just aren't. They won't get the tax money. Okay, they're not going to get the population. That you achieve all the power. You have to, but you have to just, and I got to tell you, these trad cons go nuts when I talk about this. I can't tell you how many Republican women blocked me when I started talking about this stuff.
But not all women are like that.
Yeah, Maxwell. I go through so I have this thing on X that I just tell people, like, if you straw man or Naxalt, I ban you instantly. Like, I just can't have you on my site, you know.
Mm.
And women do it all the time. They just do it all the time. But like, it's just not safe for young men to marry, and it's really obvious that it's not safe.
Mm.
Half of all children today, over half in America, are raised in single mother homes.
Yeah,
over half of kids. Half of these marriages are ending in divorce, and we know the results that has on men's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's absolutely no way you can sign up for this. There's no way you can do it rationally.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a lot of people mad at me, but the whole trad thing it's funny because these women they're again a woman in a traditional role. They have life on easy street. And now they're going to whine about whatever. And I've made videos making fun of them. I really don't care anymore. Go to pissedoffparent.com and show me your hate mail. I could care less because it's all true. Right. But it's doing it. They're saying this because it benefits them.
Correct.
You know, if these trad wives were like, or the trad group, whatever, trad cons, were serious, they would then go, they would, march on Austin. They would march to the Capitol and demand these laws change and be serious about it. No, they're benefiting from it. But at a moment's notice, the biggest trad con in the world will switch over. And what about my money? What about my paycheck?
I'm going to sound like a boomer for a second. Trad con. What the hell are you guys talking about?
Got the two old guys telling you what a trad con is?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. I've missed this one.
Trad wife, a traditional wife.
Traditional.
Okay. They have the trad. They subscribe to the traditional values. They get to stay home with the children. They don't have to get a job and deal with a boss, and trade the subservient life of subjecting yourself to a man to doing it to a boss. Again, hopefully people can read into that one. That type of that's that lifestyle, and they love it. Traditionally, they love it. It was funny. My wife, who does work, but she hates the women that are out there today that are I want to work, I want to be independent, I want to be strong. She wants none of those things because she knows it's a big lie. A lot of the women, by the way, most of them are all on medication, and I can back that up with stats. They've realized the lie that liberalism has taught them. Now that they're in their 40s and 50s and doing the punch cards to the ASPCA every month, they've realized they've been lied to their entire lives, that this whole nonsense they've been fed is just garbage. And again, anyone that disagrees, pissedoffparent.com, welcome your hate mail, could care less. It's all true. Have a nice day.
Well, and that's why we got to start having conversations.
The truth. And frankly, conservatives are not doing that.
Yeah.
Nah, dude. And so there was a conversation interview that kind of came to mind when you was talking about that. And it's one of those, this is why conversations got to be had. I was very honored. Several years ago, I got to interview Charlie Kirk. And while we was talking, there was something I agree with, like 99.9% of what this guy does. And he's been amazing going into the colleges and doing what he's doing with Turning Point. But he said, we got to stop telling young men that they don't need to get married or they got to wait to get married. He said, get married as young as you can and have as many kids as you can. That's what we've got to start saying. And I was sitting there like with my mouth dropped. I was like, Charlie, I don't even know where to begin.
And
so serious.
Oh yeah, it pains me.
Anything I know you haven't been listening to anything we've been talking about to say something like that, but there's people that just don't get it, and I think it could be they don't know any better. They're innocently ignorant. I think in his mind, he thinks that is what needs to happen, and guys like us that have been through this is like, no.
Right. And it pains me to, because I've told my boys, do not get married, do not have children. And it hurts me to tell them that because I want to be a grandpa more than anything.
Right.
I wipe their butts and put up all their crap. I cannot wait to teach my grandkids all the crappy stuff so they can fill them up with candy, send them home. I cannot wait to do those things, but I could not live with myself knowing that at some point in time, some girl changes her mind, uses a system, and destroys my son's life like my ex-wife did to me. I can't do it. Jeff, I don't know if you feel the same way or your thoughts on it.
I feel the same way. Look,
yeah,
I've reached a point where I guess I reached enough young men and created, enough discussion around this that both Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh repeatedly have directly addressed my claims about marriage.
Mm.
And,
what does Walsh got to say about it, Younger?
Say again?
What does Walsh got to say about it?
So Walsh says that, what I say is correct. My claims of fact are correct, but men should marry anyway by just using good selection methods. This is the only thing the trad cons have.
No,
what I figured.
No, I'm different. I'm different.
Matt falls in that category with Charlie for me. That's the one place.
Choose better. That's what they always say. Just choose better.
So we all woke up and said, "I can't wait to marry you, so you can destroy my life 10 years later and ruin me."
Well, I've sort of experimented with different rhetorical techniques to sort of illustrate why this is kind of a terrible approach to risk.
Uh-huh.
And so the one that I found seems to break through their consciousness is I say, okay, well, if a woman gets into a relationship and is raped, do you tell her she should have just chosen better?
Ooh.
That's always.
Is that what you do? Or do you tell her that
to put it back on men?
Yeah. Or do you tell her you probably shouldn't have strange men back in your home at night? You tell her just not to do it. You don't tell her choose better.
Right.
When the risk is that great. And that seems to get through to them because I think actually I don't think Michael Knowles is entirely sincere, but Matt Walsh, I believe, is very sincere. I think
I do too.
Yeah. And
I've disagreed on him with a few things like that. And these are just guys. I mean, I can't say that, is gospel, but I think they're innocently ignorant to what's going on with this. And I wish they'd have conversations and hear some of those opposing views.
Well, particularly with Knowles and Walsh, I can say for them, when they use the word marriage, you and I, us three, we're talking about civil marriage.
Right.
Okay. We're talking about what the laws are.
Yep.
They're talking about holy matrimony, the religious sacrament.
Mm-hmm.
So another rhetorical tactic that I have used that helps a lot, it's not really a tactic, it's just a clarity tool, is I said, look, we need to distinguish between these two. So let's call what a lot of Protestants call covenant marriage, or, I'm Orthodox, so we just call it the sacrament of marriage, whatever you want to call it. We're going to call that holy matrimony, which is actually what it's called, holy matrimony.
Right.
When it comes to what the laws are and the regulation of marriage by the government, let's call that civil marriage. And let's use those two terms instead of the term marriage, because marriage could be either one of those.
Right.
And you find that they really can't argue against your arguments when you do that, because in their mind, they're translating what you're saying to holy matrimony where it doesn't actually apply.
Right.
Well, these are the same people that will homeschool their children because they don't want to send it to a government institution. Right. But when it comes to marriage, you need the government there.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
They've got good intentions with our marriages, just not with our kids.
It's more palatable to the TradCon when you say, I'm for holy matrimony, but no man should ever enter civil marriage.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, under our laws, it's not possible to have holy matrimony without a civil marriage.
Exactly. Especially in Texas.
Yes. So that's the issue. And it brings it squarely around back to the laws. But like you said, for some reason, TradCons will never discuss the laws.
Nope. Oh, no.
Y'all dropped a new one on me today. I've got to start looking at this TradCon. I've been gone too long, man.
They actually pick a moment in time which they consider traditional, which is the early and mid 1950s.
Right.
But I was on X, and there was a young woman who was doing a critique of feminism for a prominent Ivy League. She was in a paper. And this woman who went to the same school said, "Hey, you need to talk to Jeff Younger. He's got encyclopedic knowledge of the history of this stuff." Blah, blah, blah. So I think she meant to do a private X space, but it turned out to be a public space, and it wound up attracting thousands of people to it. And I just gave her a history of feminist thought. But I said, first I have to disabuse you of the history you've been taught about women. Like women have not been oppressed historically.
Yeah.
And that should freak you out, but like, it's just not the case. Women have not been oppressed. And one of the things I pointed out was that women have always worked. If you go into the Bible, all the women work for money in the Bible. All of them. There's no exception to this. They all work for money. There used to be something called cottage industries. We don't really have them today. But companies would bring wool to a woman's house, and she and the children would work in the house and spin it into thread and would make money while the man was out farming. Women have always worked. This is just completely ridiculous. Women have always worked. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is men have always raised children equally. Always have raised children equally. So women raised all children up to the age of 9 to 12. I mean, this is the origin of the Jewish mama's boy or the Italian mama's boy. They're considered mama's boys because they waited till 12, but the rest of the world, it was basically age 9. At age 9, you left your mother and you went to work with your father every day. So women raised young children and girls, and men raised boys equally. They shared equally in the child rearing burdens, and women have always worked for money. And not housework. They worked for money, right? This has been the whole history of the world from biblical times right up to 1949, when America became rich enough that women didn't have to work anymore. And trads go back to that period and say actually the traditional way.
Shocking.
Yeah. The traditional way is that women actually do work. They raise young children and girls, and men raise boys. And so what we're living in now is incredibly unnatural and is a product of feminism. Because when the Feminine Mystique was written, it was designed to teach housewives that didn't even have to work, that their children were away at school and all they had to do was keep a house. The Feminine Mystique basically made all of these women believe they were living in a patriarchal prison. And so this is the time period when the trads want to transport women back to, and it's just so bizarre that they pick that period instead of all of the rest of human history when we had different arrangements where men actually raised boys. I mean, it doesn't make sense for a woman to raise a boy. It makes absolutely no sense to that. And but anyway, there's like a whole set of assumptions that go into why you would want. Nietzsche said, "Don't ask why people do things. Ask what kind of person would want to do those things." That's one of the most important things you can learn from reading Nietzsche. What kind of person would want to transport themselves back to the early 1950s? If it was me, wouldn't you want to? Come on, be honest. Wouldn't you want to go back into the cowboy days and run a ranch? Let's be honest. Like, come on.
My younger days.
You want to put on a suit with a skinny black tie and go be an advertising exec and some, come on. Nobody really wants to do that shit.
I have not worn a suit since my last political meeting.
Those guys fought World War II. Believe me, they didn't even want to do that kind of shit.
Right.
Believe me. So, but what kind of person would want that? It's very strange when you think about it. I'm not going to get the details, but there's something deeply wrong with the trad view of the world. And it's based on a completely inaccurate understanding of the history of the family.
Awesome. I wish more people learned that and would know, when they get into these discussions or whatever, because, everyone's feelings get swayed and all this other nonsense. I just wish because I'm seeing a lot of the comments on Instagram and stuff like that. And I've been wanting to comment that all these people are arguing back and forth while we're talking about strengthening the family, breaking down family court. And
be honest, the thing that gets them is Trump.
Oh yeah. Oh,
They see
and
that instantly.
let's get this out of the way now. There you go. Right there.
Just banned gender transition surgeries.
And people are mad.
And you can't cheer that. And
I
then
know.
like last week I was looking, I mean, they anything that's got his name attached to it, they have to hate it. I used to think that Trump derangement syndrome was just like some made up thing. It was real, man.
It's real.
Last week I'm seeing these guys, you got pedophiles, murderers, rapists, like all across the board that are being deported right now. And there's people calling Trump Hitler for doing
it in churches. What would you go into someone's church and take them out? Yeah, if they raped your kid,
Of course, I take them out. What are you talking about?
What would you feel? Recoil.
Is that someone that you would open up your doors to?
Yeah.
But you expect everybody else to open up their doors and let them in their neighborhood. Okay, I
Right.
got you.
Right.
Man.
But again,
Do as
isn't
I
that
say, not as I
indicative-
do.
That is so indicative of a system that just doesn't care about outcomes, right? It cares about some kind of procedural, moral notion. I just got into a big fight with one of the lawyers that supports Justice Blacklock. Who's one of my enemies right now.
Blacklock.
Yeah, and he's for the audience, he's the chief justice of the Supreme Court of Texas. And he's the guy that wrote the opinion that sent my son to California to be chemically castrated from Texas. So I was just pointing this out to people, talking about, what kind of a scumbag he is. And he's a liberal scumbag. And this lawyer got all up in arms and said, he did you the courtesy of writing an opinion for your mandamus. Most mandamus don't even get. And so I'm like, you're telling me he did me a courtesy sending my son to California to be castrated? I said, look, buddy, I know you're a lawyer and you think justice is procedural. So if the procedures were followed, it's just. But most of us are actually human beings instead of robots like you. So we think of justice as good outcomes. This was not a good outcome, and people that just blows these guys' minds. But this is all basic shit. It's all basic stuff. In the end, the system can't succeed if we don't follow it. And the biggest lever we will ever have is simply not to obey the system. That's why, look, I just told my judge, I said, I'm not coming to any more hearings with you. Now that I know you're biased, I'm never showing up for hearings ever again. I'm just going to argue on paper because I know you're going to do your worst. Now that I know you're going to do your worst, why would I ever come and argue? I'm not going to argue.
Right.
They're not used to that. I don't obey him. I don't care. I'm not paying child support. I don't care. I'm not going to obey tyrants. I'm not going to obey people when they force me to hurt my kid.
We need a million more like you.
That's the reason why the system has gotten to where it's gotten.
Most fathers do follow. Most fathers do obey.
Yeah.
They obey these gag orders, which astonishes me.
Yeah.
We
need more people like you to come to stand up against the system. And I want to say I see it. I'm still not seeing it. I mean, with the recent election, things have gotten a little bit better. People are feeling a little less scared to come out and say their position or opinion, or wish we could get some education going. That's a whole different story. But again,
Dude, they tried to shut you down. They would censor.
Oh yeah.
I can finally get Jeff on here and say what needs to be said. For so long, we had to tiptoe around.
Yeah.
Or you lose your platform. They was threatening to mutilate his son and pump him full of hormones, and he can't talk about it. And you defied that rule every step of the way, and I'm glad you did. But that's what we was going through, guys. And so if you think coming in and throwing some comments, because your little lefty heart got hurt, I don't give a damn.
No,
it takes a lot more than that to rattle this cage or any of these cages.
I tried to get my Judge Mary Brown, Bloody Mary Brown. I tried to get her to throw me in jail on that gag order because I would have loved to have gone into criminal court on a writ of habeas corpus and get it struck down. She just wouldn't do it, man. She wouldn't cooperate with me.
Yeah. I just wish we would get people to stand up. I talk about the Preborn Bill Act. We had 5 bills in Texas last session. A Democrat actually got it killed, which was great. The same guy, Jeff Leach.
Did you see that, Jeff?
Do what?
I was wondering if Jeff got to see the video where that Democrat got that knocked out.
I'm sure he has.
Yeah,
You saw it?
was
I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Jeff Leach is right back again doing it. We out of 29 million Texans, 7 people stood up and wrote in to fight against those 5 bills. 7 out of 29 million. And they're gearing up again against huge Title IV money. We all know Texas makes the most money, but the fact that people will not stand up and do something is disheartening. I mean, I know Eric and I have talked about this a number of times because we have access to all the data in the background that shows that, a meme will get millions of likes and comments, whereas education, the parental alienation.org thing, we just need people to stand up and start fighting. Grow a set of balls, get some gray hair, do whatever you got to do, and start getting into the fight. Sorry,
And
I don't know.
that goes beyond testimonies. As you
Yes.
said earlier.
Yeah.
You got to get off the testimony. Sure.
Get educated and get in the fight.
Fascinating thing, like to pay child support to a fetus because it doesn't have to be clothed. You're not feeding it anything other than what the mother eats. You're not providing housing for it. Like, well, it's purely a benefit for the mother. Lauren makes a good point. She says the funny thing is anytime this relates to this.
It's a guy, Jeff.
Anytime I have spoken to a woman about getting into a holy matrimony instead of a civil marriage, they argue against the holy matrimony as a Christian. Lauren, that is so true. It's happening.
There you go.
Many
times. And the thing they always mention is child support. They are planning for divorce on day one.
Yep.
You're my favorite person to bring it up to because they always say, well, it'll be okay. Just get a prenup.
Oh, I had a prenup. Yeah.
I know you did.
Yeah. I had a prenup.
How'd that work out?
Everything.
We had it, two separate lawyers. We worked it out. We signed it 6 months after our marriage. We went back to got the lawyers to do it again. We did the whole thing. And I just got a judge that just wanted to assess me $280,000. And the only way she could do it was to break the prenup.
But Jeff, those prenups are ironclad. You just get a prenup and it's all okay. They never get thrown out.
It never happens, does it? And the mechanism used to invalidate my prenup was to invalidate my marriage. So I was never married to my ex-wife.
Yeah.
And therefore there was no prenup. So they'll go to any lengths. That actually, think about that for a second. That made my children born out of wedlock and are illegitimate.
Yeah. With a swipe of a pen for money.
I'm happy to do that to my kids to get a $280,000 judgment, So prenups are useless. The bottom line is you just can't actually, as a young man, you can't get married. And I think one of the earlier commenters, I think it was Serena, she says, I tell my children to be selective and wait, don't get married just because. I try to educate them about marriage and the system. Here's the thing, Serena, that's great. And you should do that. And I applaud you for it. I don't think a lot of mothers do that. But just because you select well doesn't give you any protection.
Yep.
In the same way, if you sign a contract with a business partner, if the law says that they can just take your property whenever they want to break the contract, you're not really protecting yourself by selecting better.
And people change.
They do. They change.
You might have married a good person, but give it a couple years, and then it gets old and stale, and they want a way out.
Okay, well,
things happen, man. I hate it when somebody says you should have chose better. I mean, we do need to choose better. Okay, right. We get that. We don't need anybody to tell us that. But at that time, it didn't look like it does now.
Correct.
Jeff and Eric, do you guys know what a gray divorce is?
No.
The gray divorce is a phenomenon. Actually, you talk about it in ARP. Yes, I am an ARP member. But they were talking about an ARP, and what it is you wait until your kids are gone, and then you file for divorce, and then you get most of your ex-husband's stuff. They're teaching them. That person didn't choose the girl at 18 going, well, in 40 years when we've been married, for 40, 50 years, she's going to divorce me, take all my money, and I'm going to, end up living in a truck or something. Again, it's not choosing better. They change. I mean, my spouse, I married her with every intention of living, our entire life. After she had our second kid, she went woo, and it went off the rails. People change. Wacky stuff happens. Don't get married.
What do you think the infidelity rate is for the medical field? A lot of women go into the medical field. This blew.
Oh, the whole. It's a joke about nurses. Yeah, they're the high. They're actually, I think they did a study that they're the highest rate of infidelity.
Dude.
Yeah,
80%.
I mean, and the thing is, infidelity only matters in divorce if the male.
right.
Female infidelity has no effect on the divorce or the arrangements with the children or anything. So again, it's all stacked against the male.
Good question right here from Tom.
Yeah.
He said, I get now why we tell our sons not to get married, but would you tell your daughters to get married?
Yeah, I would tell my daughters not to get married. Yeah, because although it's more rare, we all know mothers who've had this happen to them too.
Right. And
yeah.
And women have been raising boys for the last 30 years for the
correct.
What kind of guy is she gonna get? I mean,
correct. Correct. So I think a marriage strike is one of the most powerful leverage points we have to get changes to the system. And that is completely outside the politics and the laws.
That's right, man.
And a marriage strike is what we need. And you can tell by the reaction that it gets from feminists who benefit from the system, tradcons, it gets violent reactions. So it must, all the right people dislike it. So it's probably the right thing.
All right.
Well, guys, man, we've been going for a couple hours. I have enjoyed this. I learned a new word, tradcon. I'm going to have to put that in the vocabulary. Before we get out of here, though, I think Dwayne, you plugged the website and everything pretty good, and guys, go out there and check that out. But Jeff, what's going on right now? Anything to update? Next moves or?
They defaulted my appeal, so they're saying that there was some form that was filled out incorrectly. There was information in the wrong box or something, so they defaulted my appeal. So I'm having to go back and redo a bunch. It's going to cost me, a few $1,000, and I'm going to go back and get that fixed. I've got some hearings coming up. They're requesting $61,000 in legal fees. I think $10,000 in sanctions. They're basically trying to get $100K out of me in cash. And I'm requesting sanctions on them because they didn't provide any discovery. So we'll see. It's just going to be, it's really the usual post-trial wrangling, for money.
Right.
And then I'm also we're going to focus really hard in Texas right now. And so I need some direction from people in Texas on what the legislative scene looks like and how I need to get the messaging set up to support you guys in this session. So I'll be working hard on that.
Well, guys, man, I have enjoyed this, but
I forgot to. I am engaged in an active recall of the judge in California. They have recall elections in California.
Nice.
I'm collecting signatures right now. And if you go out to at Jeff Younger Show on X, you can go to a link and it will give you all the information about that.
Awesome.
Is that Judas? Or
Judas Iscariot? Juhas, your judge.
Judge Juhas, Mark Juhas, yeah. Okay. And we'll get him recalled. Look, I mean, these are political issues that the electorate cares about. And they don't like this stuff being done to kids. And if judges are doing it to kids, then judges have to pay the price.
I'm just glad it seems like some common sense is returned into the country. And, I didn't know that about the puberty blockers. I just hope that, there's still a chance that we can save James, man, and save several others. One of the best phone calls I got, I called out Adam Vina yesterday and said, brother, I think they've been blocked. You can have a little sigh of relief. The battle's not over, but it was such an amazing feeling to be able to do that. And, I pray that that's the case for you as well, man.
Thanks,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll
All right,
see
good
y'all
night,
next
everyone.
time. Everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight.
So long.